Good evening. If you'd like to take your seats, please. This evening we have two events. We have a Measure E event first, followed by a Candidates Forum event. So welcome to the Measure E event. My name's Liz Ainsworth. I am the president of the board at the Milpitas Chamber of Commerce, and I'm going to be the moderator this evening, which has been agreed on by both the for and against people for Measure E. We do have our two timekeepers. We have Darlene Bright, who is a chamber ambassador, and we have Warren Wettenstein, who has stepped up at the last minute to help with timekeeping today, as we only had one person, and really two is nicer to have. So I would like to ask if everybody would please stand and we do the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Thank you. The way this debate, we're calling it a debate for want of a better word, will take place is that we are going to have each representative make an opening statement. They will get 2 minutes to do that in, and then we're going to address certain issues, and they'll take it in turns to answer to those particular issues. At this time, we are not taking any questions from the audience, but both representatives have said they will stay behind afterwards and will meet with people outside to answer questions from the public. So, without further ado, Mr. Livengood, would you please make your opening statement?
I will, thank you. I want to first thank all of you for being here tonight, the Chamber, and Mr. McInerney for agreeing to represent the No on Measure E campaign. Like many other communities, Milpitas is struggling to balance its budget while keeping taxes low, which is no easy task. The state of California's decision to end redevelopment has hit Milpitas particularly hard, forcing layoffs, program cuts, layoffs of firefighters, parks personnel, and other critical service providers. There is simply no more cuts to be made without hurting families and people. Measure E gives Milpitas a unique opportunity. More than $8 million in new tax revenues without raising taxes on Milpitas residents. Please let me repeat that, $8 million, new tax revenues, no new taxes on Milpitas. I don't know about you, but I'd much rather have a new revenue source of $8 million instead of having my sales tax or sewer rates or water rates raised. Remember, the citizens of Milpitas enjoy some of the lowest tax rates in California. Measure E will help keep it that way. It is important to know that the proposed card room is not a new card room. It currently exists just a couple of miles from our border in North San Jose, and it's been there for over 20 years. There are many Milpitas residents who play poker there, and others still who work there. Measure E would simply move that existing card room to the northwestern edge of our city near the sewage treatment plant so that Milpitas residents benefit from the taxes that it generates. Taxes that our residents do not have to pay, over $8 million in tax revenue. Now, I acknowledge that some people are worried about a card room in our community will threaten the outstanding quality of life that we enjoy. I would never support a proposal if I thought it would hurt our city, and neither would our mayor and our vice mayor, members of our city council, our police officers, our firefighters, many members of our city staff, and former mayors, all of whom support Measure E. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McInerney.
Bay 101 owners are pursuing a familiar strategy for private firms that want to build a new major facility. They are exploiting Milpitas city government for a significant private gain by marketing their new facility as a politically easy way to promote economic development and improve the city's financial stability. Measure E would permit Bay 101 owners to relocate from San Jose to Milpitas, but not guarantee that they would come here even if the required state legislation passes next year. It would allow Bay 101 to expand its tables from 49 to 115, while lowering its tax rate on gross revenues from 15% to 10.5%. Milpitas voters should reject Measure E for two main reasons. Welcoming a large cardroom to Milpitas changes the character of our city and diminishes our quality of life. Milpitas has a well-earned reputation as a family-friendly town. As the only business in Milpitas to have a primary mission of offering adult gaming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it would severely tarnish our reputation. Its operation would also contribute to negative social costs that are difficult to quantify, but have the effect of lowering our collective quality of life. Even if you can accept the notion that a large cardroom may coexist with a family-friendly town, you still should oppose Measure E. Measure E is such a bad deal for Milpitas and such a great deal for Bay 101. The Bay 101 owners would have an inordinately large financial gain compared to the cities, and they would also operate in a gambling-friendly environment that severely hampers local control on the expansion of gambling in Milpitas. Measure E asks Milpitas voters, are dollars more important than our city's character? With so much uncertainty over its true social costs to the community and such a sweetheart deal for Bay 101 owners, Milpitas voters must say no.
Thank you. So now we will move to address specific issues that have been mutually agreed between the representative of the for argument and the opposed argument for Measure E. And the first criteria that we're going to address is security and the potential for crime. Mr. McInerney, would you please speak to that first?
San Jose requires its police chief to report annually on crimes in San Jose associated with its two card rooms. He does report on the number of crimes committed at each card room location, but not on those that happen in San Jose neighborhoods that are associated with card rooms due to a lack of resources. From the latest report, we project that a Bay 101 in Milpitas with only 49 tables would produce a 5% increase in Milpitas violent crimes, such as robbery and aggravated assault. It would also result in a 1.5% increase in Milpitas property crimes, such as auto theft, grand theft, and petty theft. These increases are for crimes tracked by the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting System. In addition, there would be another 120 crimes, mostly counterfeiting and forgery, that are not covered by the FBI's reporting system. As I indicated in my opening, Measure E increases tables by 135% from 49 to 115. I am sure that more tables would lead to more crimes at the Bay 101 location. Since Measure E does not require an annual report on crimes committed at the card room location, residents would never know. Due to the same lack of resources facing San Jose, we would also not know what crimes are happening in our neighborhoods associated with Bay 101. Based on a 2006 state study, Milpitas has roughly 1,900 problem gamblers and approximately 3,400 at-risk adults. According to the California Office of Problem Gambling, each problem gambler negatively affects 7 other people. These impacts include committing crimes such as domestic violence, senior abuse, check forgery, and theft. I'm sure that moving Bay 101 to Milpitas and increasing the number of tables will increase in the crimes that our city's problem gamblers commit.
Thank you. Mr. Livengood, would you please give your argument on security and crime?
Thank you. I would say that there's no one more qualified to evaluate alleged crime potential than our own police chief and police officers. They carefully reviewed this proposal when it went before the city council, and they have concluded that a card room in Milpitas is a manageable business that will not jeopardize the citizens of Milpitas. Our police department said that. I remember about 22 years ago, the city council proposed that we renovate the former Ford Motor Assembly plant into the Great Mall of the Bay Area. And I remember there were residents that came forward and opposed the mall. And they said it would bring crime into our community and ruin our quality of life. That's what they said about the Great Mall. That should sound familiar to all of you, because you just heard that. The city council approved the Great Mall and promised our residents that they would provide adequate police protection and keep us and the millions of people that go to the Great Mall as safe as possible, and that's exactly what has happened. And oh, by the way, since it opened, the Great Mall has generated $60 million for the city of Milpitas revenue. Some of the leaders on the No E on E campaign are complaining that Milpitas Police Department is not capable of policing a card room. Of all the specious arguments put forward by the No and E campaign, this is the most insulting one. Just like they stepped up and handled the Great Mall, just like they're going to step up and handle BART when it comes to Milpitas, the Milpitas Police Department will step up and handle any crime issues that come into the city because of Bay 101. They will focus on the, like a laser, on the patrolling this facility and making sure that it is safe. They're hiring 3 new police officers. There are 88 card rooms in California, and the majority of them are in cities smaller than Milpitas, like Emeryville, San Pablo, and Gilroy. Guard rooms are licensed by the state, they are heavily regulated, and they are trusted partners with the communities they do business in. Just call those cities up and ask them, they'll tell you. We will all benefit from having this card room in our community.
Thank you. The next criteria that would you please address is referring to the location of the card room. And Mr. Livengood, would you please start this?
I will. Thank you. As I've already stated, the card room will be located on the northwest side of our city, west of Highway 880, away from current neighborhoods, schools, and churches. The card room location abuts our own sewage treatment plant. It's planned for an area that was designated by the City Council 5 years ago as an entertainment zone, specifically calling out and legally clearing the way for the addition of a possible card room. Frankly, it's an ideal location for a card room and the best possible use for this land. The city has tried to develop this land to no avail. High-tech companies have shied away from it, and the city of San Jose, where Bay 101 is, has thwarted Milpitas' efforts to develop this land so Milpitas taxpayers can benefit. It's time for Milpitas to finally reap the benefits from developing this land. I got a laugh the other day when somebody on Measure E said that they didn't think it was right that we took jobs out of San Jose. I said, are you kidding me? San Jose has been luring business away from Milpitas for years. San Jose has interfered with our zoning processes. They have sued us. They have undercut our economic development efforts at every turn. They originally insisted on a ridiculously priced option for BART that almost blew up the whole process for BART. And they refused to spend the money necessary to fix our sewage treatment plant. I don't feel sorry for San Jose, and I'm not going to shed any tears when Bay 101 moves to the city of Milpitas and brings with it $8 million in revenue. Finally, let me say that this card room will sit on land that is owned by the Bum family, owners of Bay 101. They are not Las Vegas type tycoons. They're local business owners. They will be partners in our community. They will work with Milpitas every step of the way. They have successfully operated businesses like the flea market in Santa Clara County for 30 years. And they have a vested interest in making sure that not only they make money, but the city of Milpitas prospers and moves forward. They'll be a strong and committed partner for our city if we allow Bay 101 to come here.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. McInerney, would you please give your argument for the location of the Bay 101 site?
The supporters of Measure E focus on the location that Bay 101 would have in Milpitas as a major advantage of their proposal. The Milpitas Post quoted Mayor Esteves in June as saying, "What I hear from different cities is that it does not impact their crime rate, especially if it's properly located." The same article quotes Vice Mayor Polanski as saying, "It's a location that doesn't impact citizens as much." Based on my earlier comments about the potential for crime, there would be an increase in Milpitas' crime rate simply because Bay 101 would be in Milpitas. The proposed location will also soon be close to where large numbers of people may congregate. Bay 101 would be just across the street from the Super Walmart store and close to the proposed Pacific Mall Silicon Valley project. Since Measure E rightfully prohibits Bay 101 from providing credit or loans, these locations may provide relatively easy opportunities for some to find cash illegally to continue playing. Another impact on Milpitas residents from the proposed location would be an increase in traffic congestion. The assumption supporters of Measure E make is that most, if not all, patrons to Bay 101 would use Highway 880 to reach the card room. North McCarthy Boulevard may become gridlocked at certain times, but Milpitas streets east of Highway 880 would be spared. Given how congested Highway 880 is now, some unknown number of patrons from San Jose and East Bay would use Milpitas surface streets to avoid Highway 880. Obviously, traffic would increase greatly to our disadvantage. Ultimately, for those who oppose Measure E, The most important aspect of location is that the card room is in Milpitas. We prefer it stay in San Jose.
Thank you. The next criteria that I'd like you to address, please, is the Milpitas Gaming Ordinance. And Mr. McInerney, would you please start this comment?
The proposed Milpitas Gaming Ordinance has 6 major flaws that would create a gambling-friendly environment for Bay 101 and would severely hamper local control on the expansion of gambling in Milpitas. Flaw 1. San Jose keeps local control over the games that card rooms may offer and their betting limits. Measure E lets the state decide these gambling elements. Flaw 2. A majority of the San Jose City Council has the authority to reduce the number of tables and the amount of card room gambling allowed. Under Measure E, a majority of the Milpitas Council only has the authority to increase tables above 115, consistent with state law, but no authority to decrease them. Flaw 3. In San Jose, only voters may permit slot machines, roulette wheels, or other gambling devices, even if state law someday changes to allow them in card rooms. Measure E would automatically allow Bay 101 to have these gambling devices if state law changes. Flaw 4. In San Jose, voters must approve the increase in the number of tables per card room and any form of gambling that the state or city prohibited before June of 1996. Measure E requires a successful ballot campaign to decrease the number of tables, reduce betting limits, or prohibit games or gambling devices which state law allows. In San Jose, Bay 101 owners may renew their ownership licenses every 3 years, and the police chief is the final approving authority. Measure E sets the term of the license at 25 years, and the city council is the approving authority. Flaw 6. In San Jose, the ordinance covering campaign contributions prohibits card rooms from contributing to local city council races. Measure E contains no such safeguard. Milpitas voters beware.
Thank you. Mr. Livengood.
Thank you. I have heard the opponents of Measure E state that they think this ordinance is a sweetheart deal for the card room owners. And of course, we've heard it here again tonight. Well, they're right about this. It is a sweetheart deal. It's a sweetheart deal for the taxpayers of Milpitas. I challenge you, Mike, and the opponents of Measure E to tell us, the taxpayers of Milpitas, some other way the city can generate over $8 million a year for city services on a 15-acre piece of land with none of that revenue being paid by Milpitas residents. I challenge you to tell us that. Folks out there and watching at home, do not hold your breath because they have no such plan. On the subject of campaign contributions, the city can easily prohibit card room owners from contributing to Milpitas City Council candidates just by amending its card room ordinance or its campaign contribution ordinance. They don't need to have it in the ordinance that controls card rooms. And believe me, the card club owners will have no problem with being prohibited from giving money to city council candidates. Trust me on that. As it relates to problem gamblers, both the state and Bay 101 are committed to dealing with problem gamblers by making sure they get all the help that can be offered to them. It's not only the state law, it's the right thing to do. And while we're on the subject of gambling, I know there are people who object to gambling on a moral basis. I respect their opinions. But we already have legal gambling in Milpitas. There are bingo games being held daily in Milpitas churches, mobile home parks, and even in the Milpitas Senior Center, they have bingo games. The city regularly buses our own residents to casinos in Northern California. There's off-track betting locations, and Milpitas has 100 different places, like grocery stores and gas stations, where you can buy a lottery ticket. And of course, we have not one, but 2 card rooms just a couple miles from our border. Finally, I want to remind everyone that the ordinance does not mention anything about slot machines, roulette wheels, or other commonly found Las Vegas-style games. That's because Measure E is about a card room, not a casino as we think of them. The fact of the matter is, Measure E is a card room, nothing more and nothing less.
Thank you. The final criteria I'm going to ask you to address tonight is the financial implications of Measure E. And Mr. Livengood, would you please start?
I will. As I've stated earlier, Measure E will provide $8 million of tax revenue a year for Milpitas residents. That revenue is sorely needed, and if Measure E fails, you can be assured that attempts will be made to raise taxes and fees, money that will come straight out of the pockets of us taxpayers. Just like your household, the city's expenses keep going up. The heavy lifting has already been done. Cuts have already been made. I credit the mayor and city council for tough physical decisions they have had to make. I don't envy them. I must say I am disappointed, however, when I hear people say that Measure E will not help seniors and kids and families. Think of all the programs that the city provides in our city for kids and for seniors. You all see crossing guards every day when you go to work. Those are all paid for by the city of Milpitas out of our general fund. What about the resource police officers in our schools? Those are paid for from general fund monies. The Raise a Reader program, the sports center that we all know and love. Kids play, the Knights football team plays there, Little League baseball plays there, soccer for kids and for adults, a health and a fitness center, an aquatic center, expanded library hours. All those things are for our kids and for our seniors and for a high quality of life. And they're all paid for by the city, and they're all paid for out of the general fund, every single one of them. And I think the senior programs, and think of all the senior programs that will help Measure E, not to mention we can restore programs that have been eliminated because of budget cuts, like closing the teen center and our youth performing arts program. The list of programs that will be aided by the passage of Measure E is a long one. And don't fool yourself into thinking that that $8 million won't go a long ways towards improving our quality of life. It will. I trust the city council. I trust our mayor. I trust them to do the right thing with the money that comes in. And I'm absolutely convinced that they will make sure that any money that comes in under Measure E will go right into the programs and services that make this a great city, including public safety, police, and fire.
Thank you. Mr. McInerney?
Measure E would give Bay 101 owners a substantial financial gain compared to the cities. City staff estimates collecting $8.4 million in taxes and $300,000 in fees per year. Added together, the gross new revenues for the city total $8.7 million. This amount represents roughly an 8% increase in revenues from all city funds. To pay $8.4 million in taxes in San Jose, Bay 101 has to generate only $56 million in gross revenues. To pay that same amount under Measure E in Milpitas means that Bay 101 would have to generate $80 million in gross revenues. The difference of $24 million represents over a 40% increase in annual gross revenues that comes straight out of our collective community pocketbook. Supporters of Measure E indicate that Bay 101 in Milpitas will bring 900 jobs and offering hiring preferences for Milpitas residents. According to the San Jose Division of Gaming Control, Bay 101 has had an employee count that ranged from a low of 650 to a high of 720 last year. Given the short relocation distance, most current employees of Bay 101 would retain their jobs. Therefore, the number of net new jobs for Milpitas residents will only be around 200. The Milpitas Post of August 8th quoted a Bay 101 spokesperson saying, Bay 101, quote, would give first preference to Milpitas residents to all jobs we offer and they are qualified to do, unquote. Unfortunately, Measure E has no provision to require any effort by Bay 101 to make Milpitas residents qualified. It also has no requirement for Bay 101 to report regularly to the City Council on what percentage of employees live in Milpitas by different job classifications.
Thank you. And the time has flown by because we've now come to the point where you're each going to make your closing statements. Mr. McInerney, would you please start with your closing statement?
Let me begin by thanking the Milpitas Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this forum. I and the entire Milpitas Voters Against Measure E committee appreciate the extra effort that the Chamber's president made in the last few days to make this event happen tonight. Ultimately, with respect to Measure E, Milpitas voters are the key to the character of our city, our collective quality of life, and maintaining the reputation we enjoy as a family-friendly town. Clearly, relocating Bay 101 to Milpitas would increase the city's crime rate by some percentage in both violent and property crimes, but how much of an increase is unknown. Clearly, there are potential negative social costs associated with the proposed location given its proximity to the Super Walmart and the proposed Pacific Mall Silicon Valley project. Clearly, it will be difficult to contain Bay 101's traffic impacts just to Highway 880, given how congested 880 is now. As in the case of crime, how much of an increase is unknown. We do, however, have much more clarity over its proposed gaming ordinance and its financial implications. The major flaws of the proposed ordinance provide a gambling-friendly environment for Bay 101, and they hamper local control on any gambling expansion in Milpitas. Financially, Measure E is grossly out of balance in favor of Bay 101's owners. They receive an economic windfall, and Milpitas has a modest revenue increase. Also, the economic benefit of new jobs for Milpitas residents turns out to be less than advertised. In my opening statement, I posed the question, are Measure E's dollars more important than the character of our city? My answer is no, and I urge Milpitas voters to vote a resounding no on Measure E. Thank you.
Mr. Livengood, would you make your closing statement?
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. The city of Milpitas is in the midst of a serious financial crisis. The dissolution of the RDA has resulted in a loss of over $20 million a year in total city revenue. Programs have been cut, employees have been laid off, and important city services have suffered. But here is the good news. Measure E offers us the opportunity to recoup some of those lost revenues without taxing the residents of Milpitas. But make no mistake about it. If Measure E fails, more cuts to services are coming and more taxes for you and I are inevitable. The city manager and the city council have a plan to improve revenues for the city, and part of that plan is the passage of Measure E. They do not want to raise taxes and fees on their constituents, but eventually they may have no choice. Those of us who are voting yes on Measure E are willing to follow the city council, trust their leadership, and agree that it makes sense to move one card room from San Jose to Milpitas and benefit over $8 million a year in new revenue with no new taxes to our residents. We have a plan. But ask yourself, what plan do the No on Measure E campaign have to save city services and raise revenues without taxing us? I can answer that for you. They have no plan, and you certainly didn't hear one here tonight. They are asking you to walk away from $8 million in revenue without a good reason. And the second this election is over, they're going to disappear, leaving the rest of the taxpayers holding the proverbial bag. There's no question about any of that. I hope that the information that I have been able to present to you tonight has been helpful to you as a voter. On behalf of the Measure E campaign, I urge all of you to join our mayor, our vice mayor, members of our city council, our police and firefighter organizations, the Milpitas Chamber of Commerce, independent business owners, organized labor groups, and working families from all walks of life in Milpitas. Join all of them in voting yes on Measure E. Again, Liz, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you all for attending. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Both representatives of Measure E and the two gentlemen have offered to stay around so that you can ask them questions yourself. They will be outside in the area where the seating area is in a few moments. We will reconvene in half an hour for our candidates forum. Thank you.